Alright, welcome back to another tutorial series by myself, Carl Breeden. If you've been checking out my YouTube channel, you have seen me do several different little things with the FPS shooters as far as health, ammos, spawn points, saving, checkpoints, level transitions, saving so that when you die on, like, say, level 2, you spawn back on level 2, not level 1. All kinds of different little things. But people have been asking me to do other little things like some AI animate or AI tutorials, which I am in the process of working on those. But they've also been asking, well, how do you start from scratch? If you were to make the game from scratch, how would you do it? So in this video series, we're going to look into doing that. So I'm going to do all of these in 4.9.2. Okay. So my previous tutorial series was done in 4.7. But a lot of it still works in 4.9. I do have 4.10 downloaded, but since I have not messed around in that enough right now, to make sure that everything still works, I'm going to stick to 4.9.2. So we're going to go ahead and launch this. I'm going to drag this back over here to my other screen. And while this launches up, I'm going to tell you exactly what we're going to look into. The first thing is going to be into the FPS stuff. And then we're going to look at, which is first-person shooter, for those that don't know what it is. And if you look at the FPS template or first-person template, you see just the gun, a hand, stuff like that. And then we'll also look at third-person and how you make the third-person character and how you get that moving around so that you can do either one of these if you wanted to, and the difference being, you know, how you actually make them versus having to do first-person template or a third-person template. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select New Project, Blank Project, because we don't want any of these template information. We want everything to be blank. We want it clear. We're going to create it ourselves. You can choose starter content, no starter content. Everything I do will be with no starter content. Files will be included as the tutorial series progresses for anything that may be needed. You may have your own assets and stuff that you want to pull in and your own characters and things like that, and you kind of just need that little nudge to understand how you're doing it. So we'll get started. So I'm going to name this Tutorial Scratch. Okay, so that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a tutorial on making a project from scratch in 4.9.2. And we'll go ahead and let that load up. Okay, so here's our base program, or our base thing. We have the default Unreal map, little pad here at player start, a directional point light, or a directional light, an atmospheric controller, which controls some of this little foggy sense that you see. And then we have what's called a sky dome, with the sun being relative to the direction of the light. If we were to change the direction of the light, you can see that, well, the sun stays in this right spot, but that is because the sky dome is not linked to the directional light. But we will get into that in another video. Now, we need to have our own player. If we go right now, we can, we can't do nothing. Why can we not do anything? Well, that is because of the wrong thing. See, we can fly around, we can look around, we can do all kinds of stuff, but you can't play a game like this. I mean, who would want to play a game where you can just bounce around like this? This isn't Minecraft. This isn't, fly around and look around thing. You want to be able to do stuff. So you want your own characters, your own game modes, and stuff like that. So the first thing we're going to have to create is we're going to have to create a new folder, and we're going to call this Assets. And within Assets, we need to get a couple of blueprints. So we're going to pull up our Blueprint class button. We're going to pick us a parent class. The first one we're going to pick is a game mode, and we're going to call this, I'm going to just call it Scratch _GM. Okay. You can name this whatever you want to, but remember what you name it, because you're going to need to come back to this later. Alright. We're going to pull up Blueprint class again. We're going to pull up Player Controller, because we're going to have something that tells the system tells our game how to control the character. Okay? So we need a player controller, and I'm just going to call this scratch_PC for player controller. The other thing we need, you won't see on this here, okay? You need to click on all classes. You'll get this nice little search bar and type in HUD, okay? And then hit select. And just type in, call it whatever you want again. I'm calling mine _HUD scratch, okay? So Control S to save it. Save it as untitled because right now I don't care. Okay, so now we have those three things, okay? But that still will not do much for our game. So we're going to right-click on content, make another folder, call this blueprints. Inside this folder, we're going to put all kinds of different blueprints, such as like the character itself, the character blueprint, which will control our jumping, our running, our moving, our firing, our interacting with objects, or whatever we choose to do. And in this folder here, for right now, we're going to create one blueprint class, and it's going to be a character class. And we're just going to call this scratch_character. Okay? And then we can Control S to save it. Now, if you were to double click on that and open it up to look around, you notice that, for some reason mine's on my other screen, my apologies, all it is just a capsule with an arrow pointing forward, letting you know the direction in which the character would be looking, and that's it. You go to Event Graph, there's these unused nodes here. They're grayed out because they're not hooked up and activated. So that's all well and fine. We'll get into this here in a minute. So go ahead and just close back out of that. Now, this is fine. We've got everything made, but nothing's going to actually work right now. So we double click on game mode, okay, and we get this. All right. You can ignore the components, the blueprints thing. Under here, details here is what you want. Okay. Pausable is fine. You've got different things. Default player name, minimum respawn, delayed start, start players. Drag this over here. As spectators. You see in like some of the Call of Duty games, like Search and Destroy. You spawn mid-game. You can't spawn into the match. You actually spawn spectating other players. So you might want to use that. Inactive player state, stuff like that. But that's not what we're wanting. What we're wanting is these down here, these classes. You'll see default pawn, HUD, player controller, all that fun stuff. Okay, just worrying about these top three right now. Okay, we want to change our default pawn to our character class. Okay, but now be careful here because there is an actual base character class, but we want to make it the character class we just created. So in my case, it's Scratch Character. For the HUD class, there's the default HUD, but we want the one we just made, and same thing for the player controller. Okay. So go ahead, compile, and save. Close out of that. Go up here to window, go to World Setting. Right here, you'll see where it says Game Mode. You'll see Game Mode, and if you drag this out, or you drag it the other way, if you have it set up, you'll see Game Mode Override. But the box is a drop-down box that says None. If you click on it, you have two different game modes. Okay, this game mode here is the default base game mode that the Unreal Engine comes equipped with, and you have the one that we just created, the Scratch GM in this case. So you select that. If you're unsure if that actually went in, you can click on the selected game mode, and you can see that our Scratch classes are there. So now we can save that level. That saves the game mode in there. So now if we were to hit play, we can't do anything now. We can't move forward, backwards, left, right. Can't look around, up, down. So that tells us that we actually have our player control character in the game. So we can hit escape to get that back up. Drag that over. In fact, I'll go ahead and just close that off because I like to keep all of mine right here. So now the next thing we need to do to get this character moving around is we need to set up the keys. I mean, what are we going to move with? What are we going to look around with? And all. So I'm just going to do the basic keyboard keys for right now, but you can do the well, you know what, we'll go ahead and set up for like if you're doing a gamepad and all that as well, because it really doesn't take much more time. So you click on Edit, you come down here to Project Settings. Now this will not change the editor settings, okay? This will just change the project, the particular file you are working on. And so every map in this link to this project is going to use these input commands. All right. Action mappings are going to be things like your jumping, your firing, your pause buttons, your world maps, your pulling up the communicators, stuff like that. Actual actions that you are doing within the game. Your axis mappings, those are our movement mappings. Okay. Now we have several different things we have to do. We have to we have to be able to move forward. Okay, so that's going to be our first one. All right. Now we're going to make the others. We're going to create the other ones. We're going to add the axis mappings before we actually add the keys to make these mappings work. So the next one we're added, you may think is going to be backwards, but it's not. It's actually going to be moved right. Via this scale feature here, we can actually, under the move forward axis mapping, be able to move both forward and backwards, and the same for right. We can move left and right. Now the other thing is we need 4 more, so I'm going to go ahead and just click on the 4, make the 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we need to have a look up. We need to have a turn. Right, now that's going to be like, if you can see my mouse there. This is turning, going left to right, and then looking up is looking up and down. Okay, and then we need something that's going to control those things. So we need a look up rate, and we need a turn rate. Okay, I like to name mine similar, so I make sure mine are spelt the same. Alright, so now the first thing we're going to do is go up under move forward. Now, traditionally, what do we use to move forward? We use the W key, we use the up arrow key, we use the gamepad left joystick, the X-axis or Y-axis, forward and backwards. We use the S key to move backwards. We use the down key to move backwards. So those are the ones we need to put in here. So we need to do W, which will be this one, the S to move backwards, up, down, and then the gamepad axis. So we click on these individually. I'm going to start from the bottom, work my way up, so I can adjust the scale as we go. And the first one's going to be gamepad, and it's going to be left thumbstick Y-axis. Alright, and scale's left at 1.0. The next one is going to be keyboard, and it's going to be the down key. Okay, and this one is actually going to be a -1. Okay, now I will go more into that here later, but just for a quick thing, you figure if you're walking forward, you're adding. If you're walking backwards, you're subtracting, and that's what the -1 deals with. Now the next one we're going to do is we're going to do up. Now you've seen me clicking on keyboard and then going through all these. You can also just type in the search bar up here, and you can get to what you want to. Now when you go looking for the keys though, obviously S is in pretty much every word in this thing, so you got to kind of thumb through. And there's some W for down and stuff like that, but there's not a lot. Now for S, you want it to be negative as well, because S is down, your down key is down. Okay. Now for the move right, we've got A moving to the left, D moving to the right. We've got the left arrow and the right arrow, which we are not going to use for moving. The left arrow and right arrow will actually be used to turn our character. Okay, so we're just going to set up 3 keys here. The first key being the A key, and again you got to find it. The second one being the S key, and then we want the gamepad left X-axis. Okay. Okay. And then for the A, we want to be -1. We don't want the S because we're already moving right with the S. So to move left, we want a -7. Okay. Now for turning, or no, we skipped one, my apologies. For looking up, we're only going to have one for this one, and that's going to be mouse on the y-axis. Like, you push your mouse away from you, you're looking up, you pull it toward you, you're looking down, all that fun stuff. You don't need to mess with the scale thing there. And then on turn, we want to, let's say 3. We want the left, we want the right, and we want gamepad right x-axis. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then for left, we want it to be negative, so it's going backwards. Alright. So I will maximize this up here a little bit. There you go. Okay, and I will leave that. I'll pause it real quick so you can get caught up on that. It did go pretty fast, so we'll be right back. Alright, now that you got that, I was actually noticing here I do have one thing messed up. We don't actually want to turn with the left and the right. We want to just use the mouse, but we do want to look. We do want to like turn the character and the camera. So if we just turn this to turn right and turn this to turn, where'd it go? Look up, turn right. I think it deleted it on us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it deleted it. So just add it back and rename this one turn. And this here is going to be, the turn is going to be the mouse X. Alright, and it stays also +1. Okay. Now the look up rate, and this is going to be your Y axis for your game, for your right thumbstick. Alright, and it stays a +1. Okay, cancel out that extra one there for the turn rate. Make sure we got these right. Left arrow is a -1, positive, positive. Move right. Alright, that looks good. Alright, so go ahead and close out of that. Now, you hit play, you still see, you know, we still have no abilities to do anything. Because even though we gave the project keys to look for, we're still not telling it what to do when it finds them, when they're hit. So this is where we actually get into the blueprint of the character. Okay? Because this is going to control all of our stuff. And hold on a minute, I got a phone call. Sorry, boss man called. Alright, why did this not... Oh. If you get this, I'm actually being a ding-dong on this. This is a data-only blueprint. So just, you know, if you want to add something, just open full blueprint editor. And then it gets back to this. I don't know why it didn't just go back into this to begin with, since this is what we were in. But so now what we can do is take out this event begin plays, event app begin overlap. In fact, just take it all and delete it. If you are using 4.7, I should have said this in the beginning, but if you are using 4.7, this all still works, but you don't have those, if I remember right. It also works with 4.6, and you do not have those with 4.6. I do know that for a fact. Alright, so now the first thing that we need to do is we need to actually look at our controls. What are we going to, you know, use? How are we going to move around? Well, we're going to use the actions, the events that we use there to do this. So the first thing we're going to do, and I'm going to drag this over here real quick because this is going to bother me if I don't. Sorry. Okay. We're going to right-click on our screen, and we're going to do, what do we want to do first? Let's do our movement stuff. So we're going to do move forward. Right? Now, we have access values here. Move forward. It's a function. You do not want that. You want input, axis events, move forward. So we get that. Now we also, when we're doing the move forward stuff, we can do the move right stuff together. So bring out your move right, same way, just type in move right. And now what we're going to do is we're going to drag off the executable node of the move forward. We're going to add movement input. And this is a function. You want to make sure it's under pawn input, add movement input. Okay. And you can make sure you select it, Control C, Control V to copy and paste, and then connect the executables up. Now, the other thing you're going to want to do now is you see the scale value here. Well, we already set that in our controls, so you can just connect the axis value to scale value. So connect those up. And then the only other thing you need is the vector location, the way the character is looking, so it knows which way to turn it. So we're going to drag, or we're just going to right click on the stage, get actor forward vector, and that's going to be for the top one, so you just can hook up the return value into the roll direction, and then we're going to right click here and get actor right vector. Okay? And then drag it over. This is just, ignore what I'm about to do, I'm just looking to see if, okay. You can't do a left vector, so just a heads up on that. Compile and save that real quick. Select all of that, hit the C as in Charlie, and these are going to be our movement input controls. Alright. So now that we have those made, okay, now we need to look at our mouse inputs, because we've got our mouse controlling our looking around and our turning. So we're going to right click and we're going to do turn, and you've got to find it. Okay, axis events, turn, and we also want our lookup. So right there, axis events, look up. Alright, we can slide that over, slide that right there. Alright, now dragging off of the turns, we're going to add a controller yaw input. Because if you think of a yaw pitch system here, it's the same thing as when you're looking at the yaw, you're turning. You know, you're yaw to the left, yaw to the right, which makes zero sense when you're really thinking about things. But when you turn to the left, turn to the right, the yaw input is controlling left, right. It does not control anything else, just left to right, left to right. That's all it controls. Alright, and now for the look up, we need to add another controller input, but this one is going to be called a pitch input. Okay, for the pitch, looking up, looking down, it's changing the pitch that you're looking at. Okay. Now, that's all we have to do for that, so we can highlight it all, comment, and call these our mouse input controls. Okay. Now, we need to do one more thing to be able to move around. The last thing is we need to control the rate at which we can turn and the rate at which we can look up. Because as of right now, if we were to compile this and play it, you could play, and you can see we can look around. In fact, my mouse is actually inverted, I guess. And we can, my D key is not working, so I need to look into that. But I can move forward, I can move apparently diagonally backwards. Why is it that I'm moving diagonally backwards? Move forward, move right. Hold on, let's pull up the probably did something wrong. Ah, I did. Okay. I put in S for move right as well, and I needed to put D. So, D. There we go. Alright. And then I was having a problem with the look up. I'm not quite sure why I was having a problem to look up. Oh, okay, because the lookup does have to be negative. My apologies. Okay. So now that we have all that fixed, if we look at it, we can look up, We can look down, we can move to the right, move to the left, forward, backwards. But if you were to take your mouse and just move it really fast around in a circle, see how fast we're spinning around? Well, that's no fun. That'll make anybody playing our game sick. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually put a control on these of how fast we can turn and how fast we can look up. And that's what the turn rate and the lookup rate were. So we're going to go in and get our turn rate, and we're going to get our lookup rate, and if I can spell it properly, there we go. All right, and these are going to control that time period, that amount of seconds it'll pass that it's going to control that. And we can just grab our pitch control and yaw controls here, bring them up here, make sure everything's hooked up to the right ones, yaw to yaw, or yaw to turn, pitch to look. Slide this up. We actually have some things that are going to have to go in here. Now, spot where this is going to differ here is we're actually going to get our computer's time. That way we can factor in for lag whenever we're playing our games. So we're going to get world delta seconds. And when you mouse over it, you see returns the frame delta time in seconds adjusted by, e.g., time dilation. In short, for those that play video games, lag. Everybody hates lag. And then you would think we connect that up, but we don't. We're going to drag off of it. We're going to do a multiply. We want to do float times a float. I'm actually going to drag that over a little bit further. We want to add another pin because there's actually going to be 3 values. We want to take the access value. We're going to plug that into the top. Okay. We're going to plug the delta seconds into the bottom. And then the middle pin, we're going to right click and select promote to variable. And we're just going to call this variable. Make sure over in your details panel, under variable name, you change it to base turn rate. Okay. Now this naming convention I'm using here is the same as what it is for the templates. Okay. My naming convention on that is the same as templates, so you can't go wrong there. Compile it so that you get this default value. You can set it and set it to 45. Again, 45 is the default value of what the templates use. You can play with that value and determine if you want a slower look or a slower turnaround or a faster turn, whatever the case may be. And then we connect the result of those 3 multiplied together to our value. And then we're going to take and do the same thing to this one on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and Control C the multiply and the delta and paste them in there. Connect up my access value. Go ahead and connect the return value to that. And now I'm going to make another variable, but this time it's not going to be turn rate, it's going to be lookup rate. And then compile, set to 45 again, compile just to have it resaved, and save that. Now go ahead and highlight all that, add that to the highlight, comment, and this is going to be what's called stick input. Okay? That's how it's labeled in the defaults and the templates. In all actuality, it really only controls how fast you can look around. That's really all it does. So now if we hit play, we can see that, no matter how fast I do this, we're still only at a certain rate. I can spin, and you can still see the square itself spinning because you can actually see the corners now. I can still move left, right, forward, backwards. There's no jump, there's no talking, there's no nothing. But this is the base of how we get a character into the FPS games, okay, or even into third person. This setup that we just did also works for third person. Now, in the next video, we are going to incorporate a first person mesh into this And then in the video after that, we are going to incorporate the third person mesh into it and do animations for both first person and third person for walking, running, and idle. We will do a jump for the third person template, but not for the first person, because the first person, it's only arms and a weapon usually anyway. No point to have a jump animation for that. So we'll see you in the next video.